Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kaufman. This individual came about, who's with Stephen and I. There was a webinar that was done a few months ago, and we were reached out to, contacted, and said, hey, do you want to have this person on to speak about his research? And we accept all comers, and this is a first for us, so we're expanding our reach. Our guest is in Portugal at the moment, and he has done some really great coexistence work. Right now, he is a PhD student at the Center for Environmental and Marine Studies at the University of Aveiro in Portugal, and he will correct me if I'm wrong on that. He is also a PhD student at the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Zagreb, Croatia. See, I do that because I work in tennis, so I know that. He is Dario Hipolito. Dario, first of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for making the time with the time and everything like that over in Portugal. How are you doing?
Hi, John. Thank you for the invitation. I'm great. It's good to be back home after spending some time in Croatia preparing for next season for trapping. So it's nice to be back.
Nice. And just go into your background, how this all started for you, because I watched your webinar. Very informative, a lot of the same challenges that it seems biologists or researchers in North America have, that you seem to have sort of the same things in Portugal and I guess also in Croatia. How did you get started in this research and wanting to study wolves and the coexistence angle?
So it all started in the university while I was studying. I had a professor that just retired. He was a big influence to me. But at that time, I said, okay, it was for me at least a little bit hard to work with wolves. Not a lot of work going on. And so in the beginning, it was not my objective. I still participated in some projects because he was responsible for recovery center for wolves in Portugal. So I did some voluntary work there. It was how I maintained it, and a few years later, after my master's, there was the opportunity just come up with to work with wolves, and I couldn't say no. It's wolves, and I was always wanting deep in me to work with large carnivores. I did some work in Croatia with bears before, so it was a step by step, and eventually I got it.
What was it like working with bears in Croatia and then to make the switch to wolves for you? Was that pretty even switch, or what was the difference there for you?
Well, it was all connected with the coexistence with humans. So that was my uh, biggest link between both of them. But things are different. In Croatia, bears, it's a hunted species, and the conflicts are not as big as with wolves. Wolves are fully protected there. So it's a little bit different and much more tricky to work with people because wolves are not loved in most of the places. So unfortunately, it's much more challenging, but well, it's much more fun at the same time.
So in Croatia, bears are not considered in the same context as wolves in terms of conflict.
No, because it's mostly related with money, essentially. Uh, Bears are a game species. There are plenty of them. we are talking about more than 1,000 individuals, so a nice quota per year. But with wolves, there is no quota, so it's and well, bears are mostly vegetarian. When they do damages, is basically to crops or orchards, which the income is maybe less important and easy to replace by hunting associations than for wolves, which they're responsible to pay it, the state. And we know how the state works, and it's full of bureaucracy, a lot of delays, and it's and the conflicts just rise up. This is the situation in Europe with wolves.
And those are brown bears in Croatia?
Brown bears, yes, but smaller than in
Really?
the US.
Same species, or I mean, are they same species as
Yes,
grizzly?
yes.
Grizzly bears. Wow.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that. Well, let me ask you this too, because I know looking through some of your research, and I'll ask this about the wolves too, because I know, do you mostly study the Iberian wolves that are in Spain and Portugal? What's the, I don't want to say the subspecies. What's the species of wolf then in Croatia? Is it the same? Is it labeled as Iberian, or is it something different?
It's so it's a different subspecies. It's the gray wolf.
Okay.
Let's say like you have in America. But yeah, it's slightly different morphologically and genetically also, of course, from the Iberian wolf. Iberian wolf is smaller, more brownish. The In Croatia, it's the traditional gray wolf, more grayer, a little bit bigger than the Iberian wolf.
What are I guess the top three species of prey that they generally subsist on in that area?
Well, if we are talking about areas where they feed mostly on wild species, I'll go with the with roe deer primarily, red deer and wild boar. But I would say, and this is there are some studies finding now that is basically balanced with the availability.
Got it.
Which species is more available? It's the species they prey on the most. But yeah, when everything is similar, there are some studies finding out for roe deer primarily. But of course, then we have the problem with livestock.
Right.
Because in some areas, are there wolf packs that exclusively eat livestock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Portugal, we have I would say 90%. So the area where I work, it's south of the river. It's a isolated area because we have a big river making a barrier to the northern population. So they basically feed on livestock, 90%. Now it's slightly changing and slowly because there were some reintroducing programs for roe deer. More than 100 were released in two areas. So yeah, things are changing slowly. But
so what are the tactics then, or the measures that you're looking at specifically in Portugal, I guess, for this question, to give the livestock community, I guess, non-lethal measures? Are those things that are being put in place by the Portuguese government? Is it being put in place by state agents, or I guess city or towns, or what's the way to help them coexist with wolves there if you have these packs that are, like you say, 90% of them are predating on livestock consistently?
So I'm talking basically about, so in this southern area where we have really confirmed 5 packs.
Okay.
Not all of them have reproduction events every year. So a lot of replacement of individuals, and with replacement, so they are illegally shot, and some years there can be reproduction. So, for example, this year I confirmed reproduction in both of the packs. Um, so there is a possibility for the species to continue to be there, but it's hard. So what what is being done? So there are some financial support for electric fences and fences, also for livestock guardian dogs. But the problem is, so we are talking about a generation that are not used as- to computers, to internet, and now everything it's digital, and it's much harder for them to get the information and to get to these subsidies to help them uh, improve these practices. And that is the main challenge. So when every time I'm in the field and I knew a new livestock owner, or old one, but I didn't know before, I always try to know what they do, uh, what measures they implement, what type of management they do with the livestock, and then say, okay, maybe you should try this. You have support for this, and that is the main thing that needs to be done.
So when we're looking at your presentation, and a lot of what you stress to the group that was watching the webinar and was asking questions is really about the communication with the local communities, with the people that are doing the work on the land, to get to know them. Really, and it's a lot of what's happening in North America, at least in the United States, in the West, is trying to bridge these gaps of those that live in the rural country, that work in and around where wolves are, and the urban centers in the cities where people are trying to lobby, activism and progressive conservation. What are your tactics and ways that you're able to bridge those gaps as a researcher to help those individuals get the information more easily? Like you were saying, sometimes it's difficult for them to receive it through the internet and digital age.
Uh, Mostly, you need to be persistent with the message. Um, of course, you need to adapt if you have new facts, but if you don't have new facts, you need to be consistent and persistent with the message. So in Portugal, so in Europe, there are no wolf releases, at at least legal. Okay, because in the past people knew where pups have been raised, and sometimes they, like they do in the US, they go there, they collect the pups, they bring them home, and of course these animals get big. Sometimes they can have some behaviors that are not nice to people because they are wild animals, and uh, like they do with stray dogs, probably some of them could have been released back in the past in a while. But legal releases, that never happen in Europe. So this is a big difference with the US. But we have the huge myth that wolves are releases um, regularly in big numbers. For example, for me, people in the field say that I usually release every year about 30 wolves in the mountains where I work. And I say, come on, if there were 30 wolves per year released by me, I would be super happy, and I would not not be worried with anything because the wolves would be great. But so you really need to be persistent with the message, and every time they come up with this myth, you need to say, no, there are no releases, there were never releases of wolves in the wild here in Portugal. And usually I say, because it's true, I say, either in Portugal, Spain, or even Europe, there were no releases of wolves. And well, it's hard, but every time it comes back. And when the situation is calm with almost no livestock damages, they start to have a nice talk and they don't push that subject. And sometimes they even help you when others push that. But if they suffer a livestock damage, you go back 1 or 2 years sometimes. And you really need to, okay, let's go again. But yeah, so communication is the key, but you really need to be consistent. What one of the problems I see that at least in Portugal it happened a lot. It's so it's not the same person working um, throughout the years. People are changing also because the projects end. Sometimes there are many years without any projects going on, and this this change of people, it's really hard. People need time to build the trust, right? And to know each other. And so I'm doing this since 2018 already. So 5 years. I know some people. There are some people that I trust. I know that some people trust me. But uh, one slightly change can make a big difference, and for the worst always. It's much harder to make uh, change for good, uh, just like this, in a click of fingers.
So you said when there's livestock losses, sometimes you go back 2 years in progress, and then you also mentioned that there's some illegal killing of wolves. Can you talk about, I mean, how severe of a problem is illegal killing? What kind of weapons or what kind of weaponry or what kind of tactics are being used to kill wolves? What's the breadth of that issue?
So the most used are snares and shooting, illegal shooting. So when there is a livestock damage, there are some people that already told this to me, like um, there was a livestock damage, and they said, "Oh, the wolf only came around 24 hours after the first visit." And of course, I know how they know this, so they are waiting for it, and then it just happens. And how severe it is. So I'm talking about. I can talk a little bit more with two packs that I'm working more in Portugal, and I'm talking about a pack that um, for many years had two individuals only, without reproduction events. So, and then there was some reproduction events for 1 or 2 years, maybe. We are not completely sure. We went up to 7 individuals in 1 year, and then got back again to two. So we are talking about this, and of course, imagine with one pair only, and we need to consider a pair as a pack and not as a pair, because it's what we have. Um, so imagine in a pair, you shoot the male or the female, and it's gone because they are also isolated from others. It will take a lot of time for it to come back. So one animal makes a huge difference. The other pack is recently established, so it was two females that were together in the part of of one area for like 2 years at least, that I know from working on it. And then they just crossed the highway, which was not expected, because it's a huge barrier for them. But one of the females did that, um, and found a male from other pack, a neighboring pack, the only connection that there is. And last year there was actually 2 years ago there was reproduction, but I don't believe any of the animals survived because last year we only found again that pair, but they got pups. 3 survived to this year, and this year they got again pups. I know that at least 4, but then one of them at least died already. Well, this can happen. It's also biology. If they don't find enough food, some of them just do not survive. But now the problem is, so will they survive? Can they sustain these 7 animals in one pack? I don't believe so. It's too many mouths to feed. So, and then livestock damages probably will increase, persecution will increase, and more illegal. But of course, now you have, like, let's imagine 6 animals. Now, if they shoot 1 or 2, okay, the pack will continue. It's not as severe as when you have just a pair, but it's still important, right?
It just seems like there's a vicious cycle that's happening, that these packs can't. That it doesn't seem like, from what you're saying, there's enough sustainable prey in these areas for them, other than livestock.
Well,
and that, or no?
There is plenty of wild boar. But the
okay.
problem is a small pack, or in this case a pair, cannot really survive on wild boar unless it's the piglet season, right?
Okay.
Because it's really hard for 2 adult wolves to kill adult wild boar. Yeah. We are talking smaller animals, so smaller wolves
I see.
in the US, slightly smaller, but still makes a difference. And 2 animals, 2 adults, it's really hard for them to kill a adult
That's still
wild
surprising.
Because they can just turn and read them, right, with
their tusks.
teeth.
Yeah. How big are wild boar usually? How big do wild boar usually get? Are they rough are they roughly the same weight as the wolves, or are they?
No.
Okay.
So we are talking about wolves 35 kilos, and we are talking wild boars. It's adult ones, nice ones, females with 60, 70.
So 35 kilos is like just under 80 pounds. So yeah, they're certainly smaller.
Yeah, they definitely are.
But these wild boar are like just a big chunk of muscle, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like a war tank. They can go through everything, so it's really hard.
Oh man, I could see how that's difficult. You're not talking about an ungulate then, and it's a smaller, stockier animal that can obviously just be a bowling pin and just run through things. I'm looking at something too, Dario, that it's from the Atlantic Bridge Consulting and Investment. This is from early on this year in January, and it was talking a little bit about Iberian wolves being a symbol of Portugal, or they're a protected species, but they're like this main symbol. Like if you were to say what's the animal of Portugal, there are some people that are saying that the Iberian wolf is the symbol of the country. Is that accurate? Is it sort of mixed messaging? Like, where do wolves specifically fall, I guess, in the social tolerance aspect? Obviously, it depends if we're talking about livestock, people who raise livestock, or orchards. But overall, what's the social tolerance of wolves on the landscape, or even where you're studying them? What's the tolerance level there?
In the area where I'm studying, it's really negative. It's really hard for them to persist. So we are in this situation for many years. And now it was really interesting. There is a local soccer club that adopted the Iberian wolf as the mascot. So I will. So this happened last year, out a little bit out of nowhere, and nobody was expecting. It was they just appeared with a team bus, and they reveal like the wolf, and they said, okay, we want to be called the wolves, the Freite wolves that are. It's the mountain where wolves are, and it's close to this club headquarters. So, and it was really interesting, and I'm trying now to reach to them, also to try to involve them a little bit. Um, but yeah, it's not. It's the biggest large carnivore we have. We also have the Iberian lynx that it's another story. It was really threatened, and now it's really okay. And there was a big effort to 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 put the situation better, and they were able. But with wolves, not so much. So, and there are a lot of myths. It's a mythical creature, right? It's a nocturnal creature. There are plenty of myths about it. So, but it's not a matter of symbolism or from the cult, the from the country. Um, but yeah, it's a problem. Where it exists, almost it's a problem. There are some exceptions where people, I will not say love them, but they don't hate them as much because, for example, red deer, it's more of a problem, or wild boar because of damages to agriculture. But yeah, the problem is always the same. As soon as there are some livestock damages, everything a little bit comes. So and the thing that so preventive measures really need to be pushed for people to use them properly, because there are some people that have livestock guardian dogs, but they use it as domestic dogs. So they go when they go with cattle up to the mountains. The dog goes with them and with the shepherd, but the shepherd then comes back, just leaves the cows, and the dog comes with the shepherd. So it's not a livestock guardian dog, it's a shepherd guardian dog. So it's not working properly.
So is there an element of personal fear around wolves in
Yeah.
Portugal? I mean, there is some here, obviously, even with so few conflicts with people, it seems to pop up. But I mean, are people personally afraid for their safety when it comes to seeing wolves in the vicinity or near settlements, I guess?
Yeah, that comes all the time. For example, now we have one project going on in several countries in Europe that is dealing with these now so-called confident wolves. And this is because so wolves in many parts of Europe just increased a lot in recent years, mainly because in these countries there is plenty of wild prey, roe deer, mainly. For example, Germany, it was a boom, really. It was really fast. I think 30 years ago, nobody was expecting this as fast as it did. So, and now we have like a problem of wolves coming close to settlements, uh, and um, and we have now this live wild wolf project that is trying to understand a little bit what are these behaviors, if there is something special with these wolves, are them really confident wolves. Even there is a term of bold wolf. Are they bold wolves? Are they confident wolves? Or are they just normal wolves that they are just discovering the territory, and now people are there. They need to deal with it, and they get used to it. Okay, but yeah, people when they see a wolf, if they are not used to, after many years of absence, sometimes they get worried. But yeah, we don't have cases of wolf attacks on people, and usually when they are aggressive to people, there's something behind, rabies, for example,
I
or
think it's the same here,
other
mainly.
Right.
situation. One big difference in between US and Europe is the available wild areas that you still have in the US that we don't have.
Right.
So it makes total sense when we talk about Yellowstone. You can have packs without almost no connection to people, right? Unless researchers and stuff like that, and of course some tourists in the middle of the wild. But we are not talking about settlements everywhere, right? It's really hard on.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that. It sounds like you have a bigger issue than we do with livestock and cattle depredations. I mean, wolf packs sustaining almost completely on livestock, whereas I guess because we have a lot of wild spaces, we have a lot less of it and not a lot of packs that are. I don't know if we've heard of a pack that was really, 100% sustaining completely on livestock, but we still have, very similar negative feelings towards them, regardless of that discrepancy. It's definitely not proportionate.
Well, I usually I give this example to local communities. It's like, what do you prefer if you have? Let's talk about meals, right? You have a nice restaurant who serves really nice food, and they just put plates outside at the window, and you can just go pick it up, leave, and or you go and you need to go to the supermarket or go fishing or I don't know what else, and then you still need to cook it. And come on, if the restaurant is nice and you don't need to pay for the food, I know where you're going to go. So
It's true.
it's exactly this. That's why if people do not protect the livestock, it's much easy to go there. Sheep and goat, sheep, for example, they don't run, especially from a wolf. Okay, they run, but not as fast. Goats, okay, in the middle of the mountains, they can go to rugged areas where it's hard to go after them. Okay, cows, right? They can defend themselves. They are big animals, but with three wolves around them, it's really hard. But they still can try to defend themselves. But it's still easier than a road you're jumping and running through the middle of the forest at much higher speed, right, than a goat or a cow.
I know you said that during the roe deer reintroduction, the wolf dietary habit kind of changed a bit. It transitioned from.
It's changing.
Can you talk in more detail about that? And what was the context of the roe deer reintroduction? Like, why did it need to happen? Did it happen as a method of providing new prey base to wolves, or what was the reason for the reintroduction? And how do you have has anyone done specific research on what kind of changes happened from just before that reintroduction to after they started to build significant numbers?
So this is still
Okay.
quite recent. The first reintroduction was just made now 10 years ago. And so there were 4 reintroduction events in the area of one pack, 3 in the area of another pack, and there was the last one in 2021 in a third area, and last year and this year there were no reintroductions. And these reintroductions occur because the only wild prey available was wild boar, and as I said before, it was hard. And so piglets are mainly available between February and June. After that, it starts to be hard for wolves to go after them. They are already big enough. They can they don't stay behind, and they are more aware of the danger of the wolf, right? And the objective was to provide prey diversity, to increase prey diversity, right? So to have another species, a species that do not cause as much problems as, for example, red deer, which cause much more problems, okay? That was one of the reasons for roe deer instead of red deer, for example. And yeah, the main objective was to try to slowly, because it takes time to shift the dietary preference of wolves to at least a little bit more towards the wild prey. And we are seeing this already. So we have some studies before the reintroduction that we saw that it's like 90% of human food resources, not only livestock, garbage, also poultry. In my area, also poultry is quite common. There are chicken farms everywhere, and they just toss the dead ones outside, and wolves just go there like foxes and everything else and just pick it up. So, and now it's slowly increasing, but it's increasing, the wild prey proportion. We already see hairs of roe deer in the wolf's cats. So we have even photos of wolves. I can share for you, with you guys, of a wolf with a part of a roe deer in the mouth. So it's going, and so this roe deer introduction made wild prey more easily available in the other period where piglets are not, right? So the fawns, usually born in May, it's when the piglets start to be big enough. So there are a few more months, and then of course roe deer. Sometimes it's easier to prey than wild boar, right? Because of the size
Man.
and the aggressiveness of wild boars.
Were roe deer a natural ungulate prey species that were on the landscape? Okay, so they were, and it's just giving that population kind of a boost to make sure. So, in other words, you're not
So
transplanting.
it was completely, or mostly, we assume it was completely absent in this area. Previously, in the past, there was some studies made to know where should we go and collect the animals. So they came from Spain. Genetically, it was the closest to which previously occurred genetically. So we went there. We collect the animals. They were raised in captivity, and we bring them, and it was quite okay. We have some problems with illegal hunting in the first years. So in the first year, for example, 50% of them died from illegal hunting in less than 2 months.
Jeez.
There was one animal that didn't survive one night.
Wow. I mean, people must have been, I guess, chomping at the bit for it for some reason.
So in the beginning, we try to communicate with people and try to involve them, which is nice, but at the same time, it brings some risks, like this one. But at the long term, it was much better. Some changes were made. There was not so much publicity, but still some locals were invited to participate, and now they like to see it.
Okay.
But they still hunt them. I know where some of them are being roasted. So it's a tricky situation because you really need to balance this communication effort, and there are things that you might know, but you need to be careful with what you do with this information, because you can lose the trust of everyone.
Right.
And then your work, it's much harder, and it will be even harder for wolves.
Yeah. Are you guys working with any of the researchers in Spain too with coexistence efforts with wolves? I know we've spoken with a couple researchers from there. Is there sharing of information, sharing of tactics, coexistence measures, anything that they're doing to maybe help you out, or are you and whoever you're working with in Portugal kind of on an island of your own, figuring out what works best for you guys?
So in the northern area, there is more transboundary animals, and communication it's more common. Of course, we learn with each other. There have been some efforts recently to try to communicate more and better between both countries and institutions, mainly state institutions, which is really important, because sometimes, okay, we can harmonize field methodology, but the biggest problem is not that. So regarding availability of protection measures, it's at the European level. The sport is available for every country, financial support, but then it's a matter of implementation and communication with people and support to people directly in the field. And so I'm pushing some farmers association to be a little bit more active and aware, and also because they are the persons who people trust, right?
Right.
So the most they know them, they will trust them much more than me. So I'm pushing them and trying to give them some information, like, guys, pay attention. There is some opportunities available. Please tell this to people, because some of the times I talk to people in the field and say, "Oh, if I knew that. Oh, if I knew that," and they say, "Okay, someone should have told you this." And I'm really trying to push them to be aware. So the work is easy for everyone.
Yeah. And that's the biggest bridge to cross, is the communication barrier, who is listening to who, and who has the right information when you need it.
Yeah, that's why I pushed it so much at the workshop. It's really about community. It's one of the most important things with wolves is communication and empathy, of course. But you also need to understand when a problem occurs, when the damage occurs. You need to put yourself on the other side. And sometimes it's not about the financial problem that might come from the livestock damage. It's the sentimental one, right?
Right.
The connection that sometimes, for example, there are people here in Portugal, in the area where I work, that have 2 or 3 cows, and there is a bond.
Right.
Sometimes people don't like to admit this in a normal situation, but of course there is a bond. They treat those animals really nice. They graze free in the mountains. They come home every night. They have food available at home also. Some of them, okay, they take milk every day. Some of them not even that. It's just the calf that is born next year that will give some food or some money. So it's more of the bond they create. Sometimes it's much harder, and you need to put yourself on their position, right? And some empathy, and sometimes just listen to them. It's the most important. They feel abandoned, they feel alone, and they just need someone to talk and to speak their problems.
Yeah. No, we hear you. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. How do you feel going forward? And I want to touch on Life Wild Wolf that you were talking about, because that's a new project that you're working on. What do you think lies in the future of wolves in Portugal and all of what of the work that you're doing, your team is doing, do you think we'll get to a point of tolerance or a tolerable level where people will understand they can coexist, or do you think it's going to take obviously some more time and more communication and more efforts?
Well, I think the challenge will increase because for many years we were listening to urban people talking that you should protect wolves. And now in some areas like in Italy, Germany, wolves are coming close to settlements and sometimes to urban areas. There are wolves around Rome, for example. So it's a new challenge. We need to see how people will react to this, and the reaction is not being that great. People now feel afraid. One thing is to have to talk about animals that are far away and talk. Okay, you should protect them. Another thing is when they are on your backyard, right? Just roaming, but well. So this Life Wild Wolf project is trying to understand a little bit more about these new challenges of dealing with people in urban areas and seeing if really there are some changes between these wolves in these areas and wolves in more wilder areas, if we can call it like that in Europe. In US you can, but in Europe it's a little bit trickier. So that is the main goal. There are also some issues with hybrids in some areas that we are trying to tackle and to identify hotspots. So it's a really a different project. That it's not a pure conservation project of wolves in the wild. It's really to try to maintain wolves wild, and that's the objective.
Yeah. It's always going to be a difficult situation. And we appreciate all the work that you're doing and the work you've already done, obviously, with everything that's been happening there. Dario, where can they find, I know you gave us a bunch of, we're going to give you all Dario's Instagram, the websites that he gave us for his research group and stuff like that. But where's one place, if you could tell anybody to go and see the work that you're doing, what's the best place for people to do that?
Well, I try to use a little bit of Instagram and Twitter to post a little bit of my work. So my research group, it's Instagram. It's mostly of the work that is being done in Portugal. This Life Wild Wolf will have a website soon. It's really being finished. But then you can search for Life Wild Wolf and information will appear about the objectives of the project and the work being done so far. So yeah, basically Instagram and Twitter, I'm trying to keep that updated with my work, and usually it's about field work. It's the most exciting thing. Of course, we have a lot of bureaucracy and computer work, but what I enjoy the most is being in the wild and trying to track and capture some wolves. Especially, I do that in Croatia, not in Portugal yet, unfortunately. Maybe in the future, if I can find some budget also to do that in Portugal, it will be great. But yeah, for now, just in Croatia, we have now this project, so it's a really nice opportunity.
No, that's great. And we can't thank you enough for what you're doing in Europe and in Portugal and Croatia for helping this species out as best you can. Our last question for you is, when you hear the word wolf, what's the thing that comes to your mind?
It's a myth. It's some mythical creature that can adapt to such different situations and hard situations. It's amazing, and I understand why there are so many myths about them. They have been persecuted for so long and so hard, and they still survive. And they survive in human landscapes, like maybe no other large carnivore can. So it's really, they are mythical creatures. So it's what comes to my mind.
No, that's really. I mean, it's like you said, it's been happening for such a long time. Dario Hipolito, thank you so much for again spending the time to making it work, and just continue to do what you're doing. We really appreciate you and all the work. So thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys, and thank you also for all the amazing work you are doing in the US, with everything, with the center and with the communication and everything. It's really important. And again, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to talk a little bit about my work and wolves in Portugal and Croatia and Europe. Thank you, guys.
Anytime.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome anytime. Just stick around for a moment. House to you all out there, and we'll be with you next time. Bye, everybody. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.